Three girls, three sisters, got into their father's car and left their mother's home to spend time with him and enjoy a camping trip in nature, something they had done many times before. But this time, they never came back. What began as a disappearance quickly turned into a massive search for 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia. Police found an abandoned truck, traces of human and animal blood, a tent, plastic bags, and zip ties. But not the father, a man with elite military training who seemed to vanish into thin air. A race against time began to find a man with nothing to lose. Can someone who spent his whole life mastering survival make it to the Canadian border before he's caught? By Friday evening, May 30th, 2025, Travis Decker arrived at the home of his ex-wife, Whitney Decker, in Wenatchee, Washington, to pick up their three daughters and spend some time with them, as he usually did. But by 10 p.m., Whitney contacted the police because she was growing worried. The girls were supposed to be home by 8, and she had tried calling Travis multiple times. Each time, it went to voicemail. Wenatchee police wanted to immediately activate the Amber Alert system for missing or abducted children, knowing how impossible it is to ignore an Amber Alert. All TV and radio broadcasts are interrupted, highway signs display the alert, and most importantly, an extremely loud notification is sent to phones, startling but effective. However, the Washington state authorities denied the request, stating there was no cause. Travis had never been accused of domestic violence. He had never harmed the children, something their mother confirmed, and therefore there was no reason to assume the girls were in danger. When Travis and the girls failed to show up at a sporting event the next morning, Saturday, May 31st, police finally decided to inform the public. But once again, they chose not to activate the urgent and far-reaching Amber Alert system. Very soon, they would have to answer for that decision. The girls' mother, Whitney, said that Travis seemed unusually quiet when he came to pick up the children. But she wasn't concerned, at least not until it was time for the girls to come home, and they didn't. Travis had never been late before. He always brought the girls back on time. Whitney tried calling him, but each time the call went straight to voicemail. And since her ex-husband didn't have a permanent address, she had no idea where to look. So Whitney turned to the police. Her fear for the girls' safety grew when Travis didn't show up for work on the morning of June 2nd. When officers visited his workplace and spoke with his supervisor, they were told that Travis had recently been acting off. His emotional state was clearly deteriorating. That same day, June 2nd, police obtained an arrest warrant for 32-year-old Travis Decker on charges of custodial interference. Using automatic license plate recognition technology, authorities learned that at 5:41 p.m. on Friday, shortly after picking the girls up, Travis's vehicle had been headed north across the Wenatchee River Bridge. Police focused all efforts in that direction, while officers also began digging deeper into Travis's background. They learned that Travis and Whitney got married after he returned to the U.S. from Afghanistan. Several generations of Decker men had served in the military, and Travis had likely always known he would follow in their footsteps. As a child, he was athletic, and after graduating high school, he enlisted in the Army. He completed basic combat training and advanced individual training to become an infantryman, one of the most dangerous and physically demanding roles in the military. Just a year later, he was deployed to Afghanistan, where he remained until 2014, undertaking a variety of dangerous missions. In other words, Travis spent years training and practicing how to survive in hostile environments, in the wilderness, often without supplies. He knew how to evade pursuit, think strategically. He knew how to disappear. Unfortunately, it was during that time that his mental health began to deteriorate. He returned to the U.S. not only with medals, but also suffering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Still, it didn't stop him from becoming a husband and the father of 3 beautiful daughters. Back in the U.S., Travis joined the National Guard. The family lived in Wenatchee, a small town in the heart of Washington state, where the Columbia and Wenatchee rivers meet. The couple was married for 7 years, and in the beginning, they were very happy. Travis deeply loved Whitney and the girls, spent all his free time with them, took them to events, and cared for and protected them in every way. According to Whitney, he had never been aggressive or cruel. He never even raised his voice at them. However, his mental health issues became more noticeable over time. Sometimes he would leave in the middle of the night or wake Whitney up with his screaming. He tried multiple times to get help, but according to Whitney, it's incredibly difficult for U.S. veterans to access proper support in their own country. Eventually, Whitney couldn't take it anymore. She filed for divorce on November 14, 2022. Of course, the divorce couldn't be pleasant for the family, but it proceeded in a very civil manner. Neither spouse blamed the other for anything. They simply agreed that separating was the best decision for them, and wanted to make sure it wouldn't negatively affect their daughters. According to their agreement, Travis would pick up the girls every other weekend and spend time with them from 6 p.m. on Friday until 6 p.m. on Sunday. Whitney never worried about the children's safety while they were with their father. She was confident they had a good time and that Travis adored them. But by September 2024, she began to question whether Travis was providing the girls with proper living conditions while they were with him. Here's what happened. A month after the divorce, Travis moved into the Wenatchee National Guard Armory building. Despite its name, the building doesn't only store weapons, there are also sleeping barracks. It's not a suitable place for permanent residents, of course, but officers can temporarily stay there as part of an informal arrangement. Travis was allowed to live there for a while, and he actually stayed just a couple of months before moving into an apartment in Wenatchee. However, when the lease ended, he chose not to renew it and returned to the Armory building. Whitney was shocked to find out that her 3 young daughters had been living in such conditions, sleeping on mattresses. She told her ex-husband openly that she was uncomfortable with the idea of the girls spending nights near unfamiliar men. Of course, she wasn't accusing anyone directly, but pointed out that someone could have bad intentions. Anything could happen. After all, Travis couldn't keep an eye on them 24/7. He might be called away or need to sleep himself. A mother's imagination painted terrifying images of what could happen to her daughters, especially since there had already been one incident. On December 19, 2023, while the girls were with their father, Whitney received a video call from their youngest, Olivia. The little girl was crying and screaming. It turned out that she and Peyton had been playing with a back extension machine, and Peyton accidentally dropped weight plates on her sister's fingers. Travis had been outside with the dogs and hadn't seen what was going on, and now he wasn't even comforting them. Peyton had to go find him to explain what had happened. Whitney was also concerned that her ex-husband loved camping and often took the girls with him. In general, she didn't object to such activities, but she didn't always like it when Travis took the girls camping, regardless of the weather. Considering all of this, on September 20th, 2024, Whitney and her divorce attorney filed a request to modify Travis's visitation rights. It wasn't an easy decision for Whitney. She always tried to be fair to her ex. She wasn't one of those women who blamed their former spouses for everything or criticized every move. No, she gave him credit. She acknowledged that he was actively involved in their daughters' lives, was there when they needed him, and he loved them, and they loved him back. But near the end of their marriage, Travis was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and Whitney believed he had stopped taking the medication prescribed to help manage it. She said that over time, Travis's behavior became increasingly strange. For example, once a stranger drove him to her house, and Travis asked to spend time with the girls in her basement. On another occasion, Travis didn't want to pick up the girls at all, saying they were trying not to upset him because they had seen him training his dogs and clearly hadn't liked it. Maybe they were even scared. In other words, it became clear that after the divorce, Travis was struggling to maintain stability in his life. Alongside housing issues, he had problems with work. First, he asked to be moved to part-time hours. Later, he stopped showing up at the National Guard entirely. He had to take on odd jobs to support himself. Travis himself admitted that he used to earn $86,000 a year in the National Guard, and now he was making about $38,000. The fact that he walked away from a military career was shocking. Travis had considered it his calling, a family tradition. That's why Whitney had to ask the court first to order a full psychiatric evaluation for Travis to determine whether he had other potential health issues. And second, that he not be allowed to keep the girls overnight until his housing situation improved. Once Travis secured stable housing, Whitney was clearly willing to resume overnight visits. The judge agreed with her. From then on, Travis could spend weekends with the girls, but without overnight stays. These were the custody terms in place on Friday, May 30th, 2025, when Travis took the children from their mother's home. Meanwhile, the search for the man and his daughters continued. And on June 2nd at 3:45 p.m., a patrol officer discovered Travis's vehicle, a white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup, abandoned near a campground called Rock Island, close to Leavenworth. Officers from the Wenatchee Police Department immediately rushed to the site. Approximately 70 to 90 meters from Travis's truck, on a small embankment, they found the bodies of the 3 girls. All 3 were discovered with plastic bags over their heads. Their wrists were bound with zip ties, presumably to prevent them from removing the bags. According to a preliminary report from the medical examiner, all 3 girls died from asphyxiation. The public still doesn't know exactly how the murders were carried out. Were the victims killed all at once, or did the perpetrator murder them one by one, leaving the last child to watch in terror as her sisters died? Did the killer observe their suffering? Or did he leave, unable to bear the sight of them fighting desperately for each breath? Of course, none of these scenarios is any less horrific than the others, because the result is the same. 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia are dead, and they will never return home to their mother. Plastic bags and zip ties were scattered near the bodies. On the tailgate of Travis's truck, forensic investigators found 2 bloody prints. Sheriff Mike Morrison later explained that the blood belonged to a man, most likely Travis, and also to a dog, presumably Travis's own. However, the sheriff stressed that the dog was unharmed. In fact, while officers were working at the crime scene, the dog calmly and gently approached them. She was later turned over to staff at the Humane Society. At the scene, police also discovered a tent and a recently extinguished campfire. Suspicion quickly fell on Travis, if only because he was nowhere to be found. His personal belongings, including his wallet, food, and blankets, were left in the vehicle. Investigators tracked Travis's phone and discovered that he had been in the area on Thursday, May 29th, the day before he picked up the girls. When it became clear that the girls were dead and Travis had become the prime suspect, police spoke again with the children's mother. Whitney noted that on the evening her ex-husband came to pick up the girls, he was unusually quiet. But aside from that, everything seemed normal. Even if something had felt off, she might have dismissed it as part of the emotional instability Travis had long struggled with. She assured officers that she had never before worried about the girls' safety when they were with their father. He never hurt her during their marriage, and he never showed aggression toward the children. He wasn't cruel, harsh, or even raised his voice at them. For her part, she always tried to be understanding of his mental health, knowing what he had endured during his time in Afghanistan. However, when journalists spoke with her neighbor, Bin Yin, who claimed to be a friend of the family, he painted a somewhat different picture of the Deckers' home life. Bin recalled that when he first met Travis, he was a strong, fit man, clean-shaven, confident, and a former soldier who had joined the National Guard. But after Travis moved out of the family home, his appearance began to change, as if reflecting the shifts happening inside him. Bin often saw him when Travis came to pick up the girls. The former serviceman had deteriorated significantly. He had lost weight, stopped shaving, and his hair had grown out. It didn't look like a style choice. It looked like someone who had stopped taking care of himself. On May 30th, when Travis came to pick up his daughters, Bin exchanged a few words with him. According to the neighbor, Travis seemed very sad. During the short conversation, he repeated the same questions, as if forgetting he had already asked them. Bin found this strange, though he was aware Travis had mental health issues. But the most striking thing Bin told the reporters was that Whitney had once confided in him that Travis had hit her. It was these emotional outbursts, he said, that ultimately led to the divorce. It's unlikely Bin would lie to journalists knowing Whitney might hear what he said. Still, we can only guess what the true dynamics of the family were. In any case, Whitney never believed Travis would hurt the children. So even if he had been abusive toward her, she may have chosen not to bring that up in court for fear that a judge would limit Travis's ability to see the girls. She understood what was going on in his mind, what had made him this way. And God knows she tried everything she could to ensure he remained an important part of their daughters' lives. After the girls' bodies were discovered, a judge issued a warrant for the arrest of Travis Decker on charges of triple homicide and 3 counts of kidnapping. An extensive manhunt for the suspect began in the Wenatchee Mountains. According to Sheriff Mike Morrison, this is one of the largest search operations ever conducted in the region. A wide array of agencies and organizations were brought in. Dozens of officers are combing the difficult terrain, joined by K-9 units with tracking dogs. Helicopters and drones equipped with thermal imaging are scanning the area from above. GoPro cameras are being lowered into bodies of water in case Travis is already dead. Law enforcement is not ruling out that possibility, and here's why. Unfortunately, cases where a parent kills their own child are not as rare as we might wish. So much so that there are detailed statistics on such crimes. Both mothers and fathers can become perpetrators, but their motives and methods often differ. Men are more likely to commit such acts, and their victims are usually older children, while mothers more often kill infants, sometimes within the first 24 hours of life. Mental illness plays a significant role in many of these tragedies. 60% of parental murderers, especially mothers, suffer from depression or psychosis. What's more relevant to this case, over a quarter of perpetrators attempt to take their own lives after the crime, and fathers are more likely to do so than mothers. But why would anyone commit such an unthinkable crime? It's difficult to comprehend how someone who is supposed to love, protect, and care for a child could take their life. Still, experts generally recognize 5 key motives. First is altruistic filicide, in which a parent believes death is in the child's best interest, to protect them from real or imagined suffering. Second is acute psychosis, when the parent's grasp on reality is severely distorted, often involving hallucinations. Third is the killing of an unwanted child who is seen as a burden. Fourth is accidental death as a result of ongoing abuse, where violence escalates over time and ends fatally. The fifth is revenge against a partner, a motive seen most often in fathers, particularly amid custody disputes or when domestic abuse has already been present in the family. Which of these can be ruled out in Travis Decker's case? If he truly committed this crime, this was clearly not an accident. Acute psychosis is unlikely. He had emotional instability, but not full-blown psychosis. There's no reason to believe he viewed his 3 daughters as unwanted. On the contrary, he consistently wanted more time with them, not less. Altruistic motives usually end with the entire family dead, yet Whitney was untouched. Travis is believed to be alive, and even his beloved dog was spared. It's far more likely that Travis was emotionally exhausted and overwhelmed by a series of life failures and decided to send a message. A brutal, unmistakable message of revenge directed at Whitney. His problems had been building: fear of losing access to his daughters, financial struggles, even telling Whitney he might have to give up his dogs because he couldn't care for them. Perhaps in his mind, she hadn't supported him, even though in reality, Whitney had stood by him more than anyone else in his life. If revenge was the motive, Travis may have taken his own life after killing Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. Many fathers who commit such acts of vengeance don't survive much longer themselves. Of course, only Travis can truly reveal what motivated him. The media has reported that a note was found in his vehicle, but Sheriff Mike Morrison has not confirmed that and says the goal remains to find Travis alive so that he can explain his actions himself. The police released 2 videos to inform the public about what Travis might look like and how he behaved shortly before the tragedy. The first video was captured by a doorbell camera at a residence, showing Travis approaching and attempting to open the door and enter. However, none of the residents knew him. This video was recorded before Travis picked up the girls on May 30th. Additionally, in May 2025, Travis was involved in 2 car accidents, on May 4th and May 27th. He was issued a fine because he did not have insurance. The officer's body camera captured their interaction, where Travis asked several times if he would be arrested and why. The officer patiently answered all his questions, and Travis politely said goodbye and left. Detectives also discovered that by that time, Travis was already struggling with heavy thoughts, because on May 26th, he searched the internet for how to move to Canada, how to immigrate to Canada, and jobs in Canada. This is curious since Canada does not extradite suspects facing the death penalty in their home country. However, Washington state does not have the death penalty, meaning Travis is not at risk of capital punishment here, and Canada would not protect him even if he managed to get there. Moreover, to reach the Canadian border, Travis would have to travel through the mountains, difficult and varied terrain, for several weeks. Is this possible? For an average person, the answer is a clear no. But Travis is not an average person. He is an exception because he knows, is trained, and even enjoys living in such conditions. His father said that Travis sometimes went into the mountains and stayed there for up to 2.5 months. In other words, he knows the area, has studied it, could prepare supplies for himself, and most importantly, has the knowledge to avoid capture for an extended period. He wouldn't be the first fugitive to try to hide in the Washington mountains. In 2020, Jorge Alcantara Gonzalez, wanted for murder and similarly experienced in mountain survival, managed to evade capture for 23 days. On the other hand, this is extremely difficult both psychologically and physically. It's not only about surviving constant police pursuit, but also about finding food. While drinking water can be obtained using modern, lightweight filters, food is more complicated. Travis would either have to carry provisions or hunt, but then he would need to make a fire to cook meat, a fire that would sooner or later give away his position. He could set traps, but that requires staying nearby for some time, waiting for prey, and again, preparing food. Relying solely on wild plants in the mountains is not an option because the heavy physical strain and adrenaline from being chased burn a lot of calories, and without protein, Travis wouldn't last long. Due to these factors, police are not confident they will find him alive. However, as Sheriff Mike Morrison said, they are not ready to rule out any possibilities yet, especially since on June 10th, police may have gotten a lead. Near Blewett Pass, they found an item believed to belong to Travis. Also, a group of hikers reported seeing a lone traveler who appeared poorly equipped for the conditions and seemed to avoid other hikers. Search teams immediately responded by sending a helicopter to the area. The helicopter did spot a lone hiker who left the trail and quickly disappeared when the helicopter flew overhead. Tracking dogs were brought to the spot where he vanished and followed his trail to Ingalls Creek Trail, where it was lost. Then, on the evening of July 1st, police received a tip from a local resident who claimed to have seen Travis near Snoqualmie Pass. If true, Travis covered an enormous distance, nearly 60 kilometers from Leavenworth. Despite the massive search effort, Travis or his body has not been found. A reward of $20,000 is offered for information on his whereabouts. Police do not know if he is armed, but he is definitely considered dangerous. Officers have urged local residents, especially those in remote areas, to lock their homes and outbuildings. If Travis truly wanted to take revenge on Whitney, he chose the most innocent victims for his vengeance. Whitney's lawyer said that even after what happened, Whitney is trying to find sympathy for her ex-husband in her heart. Finding the strength to try to understand after such a tragedy is priceless, and clearly not something everyone can do. The woman explained that Travis repeatedly tried to get help, but it is very difficult for U.S. veterans to obtain services. Also, if the police had agreed to use the Amber Alert system, the girls might still be alive today. That is why Whitney believes the system failed her family, especially her daughters. Whitney is not ready to speak to the press, but did speak at the farewell ceremony for Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. She shared a family tradition. At the end of each day, they would name 3 feelings they experienced during the day. Peyton always had more than 3 and couldn't stop talking, telling her mother everything. Evelyn preferred to share hers privately with her mom. Olivia was not yet able to fully describe what she felt, but one of her constant feelings was happiness. Whitney encouraged everyone to adopt this sweet, kind, and joyful tradition in memory of her 3 daughters, whom she lost in one day because they were all so different, yet each incredible in her own way.